Breakthrough inquiry.
That's the theme, so we got to work inquiry in here somewhere. Gonna start with some famous quotes and end with some famous quotes. So those of you who know Andy Rooney, absolutely a profound question. Since this is a keynote, we're going to, because I've been told I've got to make up some time, so I'm going to, and I'm not going to talk slow Californian. I'm going to talk a little bit quicker. In any event, I had a chance to sit in on some of the classes this morning and this afternoon. And as you are going to be attending the classes tomorrow and Sunday, you've got an unparalleled opportunity to listen and absorb the different perspectives. It goes without saying, and I'm using something that similar to what M.C. Escher did years ago. Pete Jessup at Ford worked in our office at Ford, came up with this unique interpretation of M.C. Escher's work. And because I'm not that great of an artist, what you're looking at are shadows. Okay, the real world is behind that red curtain. And you're listening to one speaker and you get his or her perspective. And going back to the Greek theoria, it's a viewpoint, a perspective of their worldview. You look at and listen to another speaker and you get their perspective, looking at it from a different point of view, not the same as the other one. We've got a wonderful array of speakers. You're going to get more than 3 tries to get these different perspectives, but you're never going to be able to pull the curtain away from the real world to see what it is, but it's your job to integrate these various theories, these various perspectives to help build your knowledge. Okay, and so that's extremely exciting. Looking at the quality of speakers that we've got. A little bit of background. About in 1984, Dr. Deming, when I was corporate director of statistical methods at Ford, Dr. Deming asked us to put on, I'm going to get feet, we'll see how, I won't. Okay. Dr. Deming asked us to put on a conference that explained enumerative and analytical methods. Those of you who knew Dr. Deming understand that he was very adamant about the misapplication of statistical methods and felt that a lot of people were being led down the wrong path on the statistics that you learned in college. And so we assembled, those of you who understand the statistical aspects, you'll recognize these names. And from left to right is obviously Dr. Deming. Anyone heard the name John Tukey? He's standing next to Dr. Deming. George Box, standing next to John Tukey, and Sir David Cox. Along with this, I was behind the camera taking the picture. Along with that group, we put together a group of consultants that were helping Ford, and at the time Pontiac in General Motors. They were listening to Dr. Deming. Stu Hunter, Bill Hunter, David Chambers, Don Wheeler, Gypsy Rainey. I want to point out, Chips, that this list is not rank ordered in deference, but I would submit even if it was, it's a pretty good list to be on. So. And so we talked about enumerative methods. And for you people who studied statistics at the university, who studied statistics at the university level? Oh, okay, 22. Okay. So the statistics you learned were typically enumerative methods. That is, you're looking to try to enumerate or describe what it is that you're sampling. And you're going to have confidence intervals, you're going to have probability p values, you're going to do all sorts of things that try to describe what it is you're sampling. The underlying theory behind all enumerative methods is that what you're sampling from, the system that produced what it is you're sampling, is the same universal, the same universe. Okay, not changing. You're pulling it from one. Analytic methods, on the other hand, the challenge is you're going to try to sample from the system, but you want to take action on the cause system that produced what the sample is that you're looking at. Okay, and again, so what? Well, they're answering different questions. They're proceeding from different theoretical viewpoints, and they've come up with a way to answer those questions. Very good in their own right, in their own world, as Gypsy and her class dealt with, but extremely important. At that same conference or series of conferences, Peter Schultes, anyone remember that? Peter, okay, good group. A little more, 35. The Peter Schultes at that conference spoke about, from his perspective, was quoting from a book by Warren Bennis, Benna and Chin, book on power. And he had mentioned that there were essentially three types of power: power coercive, rational empirical, and normative re-educative. And that, in 84, quite honestly, was the first time it really resonated with me as far as the sources of power. Okay, what I did we're in California, so I can loosely say in my research. Okay, you had to be there. Okay, but in my research, talking with Gypsy and other eminent folks, came up, and again, looking, different cultures, different disciplines have used the different words for what we're talking about. Pretty consistently, though, they established a hierarchy for them. I didn't think it was a hierarchy, and so I put the form on a Venn diagram, hopefully connoting that physical power, logical power, and emotional power is really there. You can't put a hierarchy on them. Okay, and so different cultures. I mean, everyone hears about the hand, the head, and the heart. You've got Plato's. Help me. Plato's acts, knowledge, and will. Meng Tzu spoke about deeds, and again logic and their word for will. And so each of these primary frequencies, physical, logical, and emotional, different people, cultures use different language, but they're all the same concepts as I see them. What I did was have them as primary frequency, and quite honestly, the thing that settled it for me was, this was a while ago, billions and billions of years ago, but Sagan's work on the Dragons of Eden, he mentions a gentleman, Dr. Paul MacLean, theory of the triune brain. Decades ago, we're making progress in really fine-tuning and understanding all the neural structure, but essentially you're still dealing with the triune brain. You're looking at neocortex, handling primarily logical stuff, and there's a lot of bleed through as well, not literally. You're looking at the limbic system for emotional stuff. You're looking at our complex for autonomic system, physical stuff. In any event, I simplistically looked at, okay, this has got to be a framework, and so in my simplistic view, I see science as nothing more than the logical explanation of physical phenomena. I see art as nothing more than an emotional reaction to sensory input, whether it's hearing, feeling, smelling, having a great meal, whatever. And I apologize to the psychologist here, but I'm going to the root of the word, logic of the soul, and I see those not, I know, I'm going to tick off, I do tick off people, but not as a science, but as a blending of the logic and emotion. And in the center, a non-additive region, Western philosophies would call it peak experiences or flow. Eastern philosophies would call it harmony, and it's a non-additive region. The whole can be a lot greater than the sum of its parts, and the whole can be a lot less than the sum of its parts if you mix them up not optimally. And so this is the framework that I've used, as Marcia said. A number of us have tried to interpret what Dr. Deming did talk about and try to figure out ways to operationalize it in this world. And it's not just this world. I mean, as I've traveled all over the world, lived and visited in a whole heck of a lot of places, there are different worlds within this world, as I'm sure you know. In any event, I looked for ways that perhaps, well, is there a way to improve skills, physical skills? Is there a way to improve logic? Is there a way to improve emotion that we have in each of us? And about 15 years ago, I switched from paper to electrons way before Kindles and the iBooks, although we've got stuff on both of those vehicles now. But I developed, after talking with some Olympic athletes and some what I considered good thinkers and charismatic folks, developed 3 cycles that you could use to improve each of those worlds. And I was thinking something similar to Dr. Deming's Shewhart cycle. Okay, the similarity is that every one of these cycles starts with a theory, a mind view, and every one of them ends in action before you revisit the theory again. We're gonna talk about the learning cycle, but in the skills cycle, when I talk to athletes and coaches, they're saying there's an underlying theory that I'm trying to execute. Every one of these world-class folks, the next step is to visualize them going through what is the way that how is the body going to operate? Can I visualize a perfect dive? Can I visualize whether it's ping pong? Karen Smyers in triathlon, how does she look at the running portion and the biking portion? All of those have underlying theories, and their first step is to visualize them performing that. Then how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, 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 okay? And then you're looking to perform and comparing the performance of skill to the theory, and you go round and round. Same thing with the spirit cycle. Okay, essentially, and I'm oversimplifying it here, but essentially you're either looking to be wired or you're looking to chill. Okay, and so you're looking to figure out a way to fire norepinephrine or dopamine, or you're looking to flood the brain with serotonin. Okay, and there are various ways to do that. Thinking of role models, breathing, either fast or slow, all can trigger those neurochemicals to help you get in that spirit. Again, you could be visualizing again. With the role models, visualizing how you're going to do the exercise to get you in the right spirit. You're then going to energize, and then you're going to actualize. Again, starts with theory, ends with action. On the learning cycle, we'll go right to the chase. Where do questions come from? In Dr. Deming's, one of his later books, and in many of the conversations that we've had with him, from the very beginning, from his influence from C.I. Lewis and Peirce, Charles Sanders Peirce, he's looking at questions coming from theory. Dr. Deming always spoke about theory in every other sentence, a viewpoint. Okay, he might not agree with your theory, but at least you have a perspective, a viewpoint. Theory begets question. Only given a theory can you ask a question. You get an answer or data from the question, given the theory, and the only reason to collect data is to take action. You're taking action and you're comparing it with the theory and proceeding. So it's going around in a clockwise way. I've complicated it a little bit because of Dr. Deming's feel of importance, and it's hugely important, the link between questions and data. One of his favorite questions is what? Was what? One of Dr. Deming's favorite questions. By what method? Okay? And so you've got I didn't do that as good as some other questions. You get the point. You're looking to be able to say, if you've got a question, well, how are you going to come up with the answer? Well, you're going to use this process. I'm going to try and get agreement between you and me and be able to operationally define the procedure that I'm going to collect that data for you. I'm going to then require you to take some action. Okay? Now, we're operating in a clockwise way. I'm proposing, and not proposing, but what I found is the way you improve the cycle is to go counterclockwise. If you want to take better action, what do you need? Better data. How do you get better data? Ask better questions. How do you get better questions? You've got to be able to look from a different perspective and come up with a better theory, okay? And so on. So you've got to be able to be fairly flexible and go clockwise and counterclockwise without getting dizzy, but a fairly useful model. One of the things, I've got to go back to definitional now. Again, I'm oversimplifying this, but where do theories come from? Where do theory? I mean, you can get even more basic from theory. Theories come from concepts. Okay, concepts have been around for a while, and again, an oversimplification. I've got a concept of mass, a concept of force. I'm trying to get out of the way here. Okay, concept of force. If you're an existential philosopher, you've got what? The concept of desk. Is that a desk or am I dreaming? It's a desk, the classical argument. Concept of a bunch of things. Deming said concepts, and all of the philosophers he learned from, concepts are ineffable. They're in your mind. Concepts are neural pathways that are potentiated. We spoke about that this morning in how the brain works. Very good to hear that. And so I'm drawing them as points, but in fact they are neural pathways. Okay, potentiated neural paths. You've got a concept of each of these things. It wasn't until Newton, the concept of mass and force, etc., have been around a while. My definition of theory is a connection of concepts. Okay, and so you're looking at building theory from concepts. If you want to change or advance your theories, you've got to have more concepts. You have to, and we're gonna complete the cycle in a little bit. But you've got you've got Newton looking at mass and force and says, well, maybe he started out saying force times distance equals or divided by distance is acceleration. Whatever, you try that, you collect some data, go around the wheel. Well, that didn't work, and you ultimately come up with, well, maybe F equals ma. You've got cost, profit, and revenue. Okay, some companies, I don't mean to, well, I do mean to, no, I don't, to insult folks here, but if you're a government contractor, how do you combine those two? Well, revenue is equal to cost plus profit, cost plus fixed fee. Other companies have to say, well, profit equals revenue minus cost. There's a different theory of operating. Some people might say, well, listen to Dr. Deming and say, well, joy and work fits in there some way. I can use joy and connect it to revenue. Okay, well, if you understand joy, you've got to connect it to misery, and people have found that there's a weak connection to misery in my lectures. And so you complete the cycle. I'm building theories here, whether they work or not. We'll go around again. Okay, and so the question is, how can you begin to develop more concepts? More concepts means you could use different things. Well, jeepers, I didn't know that even existed until you sat through a class today. How many of you learned something new, a new concept? Forget the theory now, but a new concept, something that you didn't know beforehand. How many learned something these past few days? Okay. How many, and I know some people, know a bit more than the folks that just raised their hand, but how many of you were reminded of something that you already knew? Okay, so there's 43 folks. I'm collecting data. Okay, in order to increase the number of concepts, we're going to close the circuit again on physical, logical, and emotional stuff, because you can do physical, logical, emotional things, and it's interchangeable. Okay, and this is one of the things that I'm finding for using the Venn diagram, that there is no hierarchy. Maslow it was a term paper. Okay, the hierarchy, if there is one, is different in every one of us, and it changes throughout our life. So you've got, if you want to improve or increase the number of concepts, there are some physical ways to heighten your senses. Okay, and one exercise I use, and you gotta talk to your lawyers. If I haven't been sued yet, but taking turns of trying to describe a chair using your different concepts. Okay, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And that's where the lawyers come in. But But you're going to, wow, I didn't know chairs tasted that way. Okay, you've got a whole new vocabulary once you taste a chair. Okay, things don't keep tasting like chicken when you ask them, right? So again, in touching. And for some of you folks are old enough to know that you actually did dishes by hand a while ago. And if you wash dishes 3 times a day, you can soften your fingertips, and they're more sensitive to what it is you feel. Okay, take a Braille class, be able to sensitize. There are a number of sensory enhancing exercises that you can use to increase the number of concepts. Now, someone can help me. The Inuits have how many words, different words for snow? A lot. How many? Okay. Somebody gave me water here. Okay. A lot of them, okay? But they have more concepts than you do about snow, about virtually anything. If you're looking at concepts, and Kurt brought up when I was explaining some of this stuff or asking his opinion on it, a number of this stuff, and I'm fairly much an introvert. I like to be alone to get charged up. Some of you are extroverts, and some of you are get your energy with other folks. But other people can really expand the number of concepts that you have. Okay, listening to other people, being around other people. And so you're bottom line is you're looking to improve or increase the number of concepts through all of the senses. For logic, you're able if you learn the rules of logic, syllogisms, if you understand the fallacies. There's a lot of, in today's political environment, there's no shortage of ad hominems. Okay, it's name calling. Okay, a number of ad baculums in what you're in many companies. Who do you report to? Who says so? And there's another. Okay, I did write it down. Verecundium. Verecundium is the ultimate insult, again, for some people, and that is it's an appeal to, instead of an appeal to authority, it's an appeal to an irrelevant authority. Having movie stars testify before Congress because they played a doctor on TV. Okay? So, it helps you to understand there are different ways of thinking, different ways of, it builds concepts. And then creative methods, Einstein's thought experiments or dreams, whatever. You're using emotional and creative venues or ways to come up with different concepts. Once you come up with the different concepts, you've got all sorts of ways to begin to try out connecting them, to form theories on how your world is behaving. And I stress your world, not other folks. What the genius is if you're able to converge the different worlds together. Okay. Again, just barely scratching the surface. Gonna cut to the chase here. Some questions that I found useful. Had the opportunity to learn from a lot of great people. This first question, as I mentioned before, was one of Dr. Deming's most favorite. How do you know? How you made a statement? How do you know? I've got to say, I'm going to ramble on. I won't. But I was in a car with Dr. Deming and Bob Hoag who was a statistician from Iowa State, I think. Bob was. And Bob is sitting in the front and with me, and Dr. Deming was in the back, and Dr. Deming made a comment, and I said, "How do you know, doctor?" He said, "He'd never been asked that." Nobody ever challenged him before. And so, well, I know. No. And Hogue is sitting in the front seat. Absolutely, God, because Dr. Deming did have a way of leveling. Gypsy, are we having fun yet? That's another, I'll tell that some other time. What are you going to do with the answer? This is a question that, and again, if you're asked a question and you are the answerer, it's your obligation to say, I can't collect the data until you tell me what you're going to do with the answer. Then I can be able to, in Dr. Deming's little ditty on washing the table. Can't wash the table if he doesn't know how you're going to use the table. At Ford, I had a chance, I got a question from Bud Chicoine, who is corporate vice president of purchasing for Ford Worldwide, and he said, well, Bill, what do you, what's the proportion of labor to material in our supply base? And I fulfilled my part. I said, what are you going to do with the answer? He said, well, I'm going to use it to justify bonuses for my purchasing executives. And I said, well, the answer is 43.5%. And he, at first you can see him going through, wow, there's a useful statistician. He's got, he knows the answer. Then he said, well, how did you come up with the answer? And I said, that's the first, that's a better question. I said, I made it up. I knew what you were going to do. Now, you have to be very secure in your job, okay, in doing that, but Dr. Deming was living, and so I had lifetime employment. And again, many other questions. When I was consulting for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the chairman says, okay, I'd like to know what the SINCs, who are the 4-star flag officers around the world heading up the military operations forces. What do the SINCs think about this? And so the answer from staffs come back, boom, boom, boom. And he said, well, are you sure? And he said, who did you ask? Oh, I asked their J5. He said, no, I want to know what the SINCs are thinking. Okay, now I know how you collected the data. I can't use the answer. Okay? And so you as a questioner need to understand what process are you going to use to get me this data, and you've got the obligation again to fill that in. What's the theory behind your question? Okay, we're going up into the circle again. What process did you use to come up with the data? What are the trade-offs? Learn that from Red Poling, who was president and then chairman of Ford Motor Company after Don Peterson left. Again, financial person, but hugely perceptive. Okay, you want to spend $10? Where are you going to save $10? Okay, what are the trade? He wasn't a systems thinker, but in his business world, hugely important question. And then one of the ones that I fondly recall Dr. Deming talking about are what are great minds thinking? And he would tell the story about his opportunity to learn from other. Well, R.A. Fisher, statisticians know that name. Said he would pay his own money to go to University College to listen. He said if you could give Fisher a grade as a teacher, it'd be 0. Okay, if you ask students, well, what are the students? Well, he was funny, had a great personality, whatever. But Fisher would make mistakes on the blackboard. He'd come in with ink not dried, according to Deming. The lecture halls, amphitheaters in the UK are cold and dark and damp. And so he said, but if you get, but he said, you asked the question, why every time Fisher took the stage was the room full? He said, because there still are some people who like to find out what great minds are thinking. That they've got the answers, but they're understanding what the questions are. Questions you've never even begun to think about. And they can do that because their conceptual view of the world is far greater, far broader than yours. Some not so useful questions. Who did it? Okay, what's the theory behind who did it? Theory X, I don't trust you. Okay? Gypsy did not trust a person at our table to watch her briefcase. Okay? We'll never forget that, Gypsy. Okay? She very set in her ways. Okay? So Gypsy calls me Beale. Okay. That's okay, Gypsy. You're on that list, so that's a good list to be on. And then why can't we? I learned that from Jim Bakken. He said, anytime you ask the word, why can't we, in a corporate environment, you've got hundreds, if not scores, of staff people, eager to answer that question. We can't do it because. That ain't your question. How can we? Okay? You want stuff done? How can we? Forget why can't we. Come up with a way that we can get this done. So those are the theory behind that is you want stuff done. Okay, so be precise with your language. Okay, question. Let's see here. Okay, so it's 8:30. How many minutes do I have, Bill? I got maybe 4 minutes.
You want to be done by 9.
You want to? Oh, jeepers. Okay. Okay. Well, it'll seem like 10. Okay. What I'd like each of you to do, we're building up a database here. Bill's going to sign for this. What you got?
Bill.
Yeah. Bill's favorite question is, how much did that cost? What I would like each of you to do is think through, out of all the questions you found useful in your life, just name one, and what is the theory behind it? Take a minute. I don't want to hear any talking for a minute. Okay, I want to give the introverts a chance to think about this. Some of you folks can talk without thinking. But we'll give everyone a chance to think about it. And then find someone at your table and tell them what your favorite question is, useful question, and then the theory behind it. And then listen. Okay. Obviously, the theory behind the question. I've got a penultimate question. Why were we here? Why were we here tonight? What is Deming? To have fun, to learn something, and to make a difference. Okay? Last quote, last question. From the famous philosopher, I have done my best. Thank you.